with a whole lot of truth. Remedy Revolution is here for you. Ooh. And now here's your host, Erin Page.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Remedy Revolution podcast. My name is Erin, and I'm really excited to have today's guest here today because, as some of you know, perhaps, I am a recovering vegan. So I was vegan for a couple of years, way back in the early 2000s, and eventually ended up having to changed my mindset completely when I found out I was pregnant. So I think this amazing guest has a brilliant story to share about some of her realizations about veganism and the vegan community, and perhaps it wasn't all it was claiming to be when it came to making sure that we were taking care and stewarding our planet. So today's guest is Mollie Engelhart. She is a vegan restaurant owner, former vegan restaurant owner, and now owner of Sovereignty Ranch, not too far from me in Bandera, Texas. So welcome, Mollie. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So I would love to hear the story and how that played out for you, because I know that your parents' restaurant, Cafe Gratitude, when I was a vegan, was like the mecca for all things vegan. And, the first thing when I told somebody I was vegan, they'd say, "Oh, have you been to Cafe Gratitude?" It was like the thing, right? So tell me the evolution of your journey and how you went from your parents having these amazing vegan restaurants and where you are today on a ranch, a regenerative ranch in Central Texas.
Yeah, I mean, people would joke that we were the vegan mafia. Like I had five vegan restaurants and they had nine or something. So largest family conglomerate aside from the sort of fast food vegan stuff that existed. And we truly believed that we were doing the moral, environmental thing in the world. And I was a vegan since, or at least a vegetarian since birth, went through some phases of vegetarianism and back to veganism. But I had been that way my whole life. And so I was not didactic like people that convert to it because it was just the what so, but I had no doubt that I was on the right path. And I also was really clear that Whole Foods was the right path. And so I never got into any of the fake vegan stuff. I was always very whole food oriented. I thought it was the best thing for the environment. And somewhere around 2013, my brother goes to a environmental conference and he's watching he was presenting, but about about environmental entrepreneurship or something. But he was watching this other uh, stage with scientists on it. And at the end of this presentation or this group talk, someone said, "Well, is there a pathway forward for humanity?" And basically, three of the four scientists said, "No, we're burning in hell. We're just gonna destroy it. There's no positive outcome possible." And Graham Sate basically said, "No, we're the keystone species. We're forgotten our role. Soil is the answer." And it was like a light bulb in my brother's head. And so he comes home totally inspired about the relationship between humanity, soil, nutrient density of food, and how that is all the perfect design. And we've moved away from that perfect design. And he's just so lit up. So then I start realizing, and I don't jump to veganism is bad, but I realize that food waste is a huge problem and it's causing all this methane. And I'm realizing how much food waste I'm making with these massive restaurants selling millions of dollars a year of food. And so I get totally inspired about wanting to have every single, um, you know, scrap of food turned back into soil. So, and then I realized there's all these laws, and funny how stuff changes. When I started, it was illegal for you to remove your own compost, and there was no composting program. And now it's illegal to not have compost in restaurants in Los Angeles. So, the time has shifted. But the only way to do it is if you remove your own compost to your own place, but you can't pay a third party because trash companies are essentially mafia and they have control. So I start talking to everybody like we should get a farm, and I'm trying to convince like every rich person that comes into the restaurant. I come out of the kitchen, I'm trying to explain about regenerative agriculture. We got to do this. We got to turn the food waste into soil, turn it back into food and bring it back into the restaurant, keep it in the loop. I'm so inspired. And it'd be like these celebrities just look at me like, "Oh, that's a cool idea." And then, "Can we go back to our meal? Please stop bothering us." And so I realized like nobody was going to do it for me. I had to do it. It took 5 years to save money, to find a salute, like a person, a land that I could make it work financially and all of that. And in 2018, I bought my own farm, and I had not thought it out fully, just that I wanted to compost all of, and I was so excited about that. So then I'm farming, and the compost is not that good. There's not that much fertility. I realized I need a cow because I started to look into like what is organic fertilizer. I'm thinking I'm gonna have this vegan regenerative farm. I'm gonna be like the leader in this new space, vegan regenerative. And I'm totally excited about it, and I'm realize I need a cow or I need some more fertility. So I start calling, and organic fertilizer is essentially blood meal, bone meal, feather meal, or shit. So I start finding out, where does this stuff come from? And do you know where it comes from? Is the consolidated food lot system. And
Mm.
so I'm like, well, where are you getting your chicken bone and feather meal? Oh, there's a Tyson place. And I'm like, oh. And then where are you getting your blood meal? Oh, we're getting it from this meat packer. And I'm realizing that organic fertilizer for all my vegan food is essentially the worst kind of death repackaged.
Right.
And I was like, oh, I can't do that. So I was like, I'm going to get a cow. So I get a cow from my dad, and it's already bred. Her name is Una. I still have Una. And Una has a baby because she was already bred. And the baby's only focusing on two nipples because she has two nipples that are pretty low to the ground and not a good position for the calf. And so we are milking off her other two nipples so she doesn't get mastitis. And my uncle's drinking the milk. It's sitting in the fridge. It's going bad. We're feeding it to the pigs. Um, because I'm a vegan. And I'm breastfeeding my baby one morning, and I'm thinking, I'm such a good mom. She's almost 2. I'm still breastfeeding. I've been breastfeeding for almost 4 years consecutively at that time. I've now been breastfeeding for 11 years consecutively because I kept having
Wow.
children. But I'm like my own ego identity is like praising myself in my head. Oh, you're such a good mom and you're doing the right thing. You're building her brain and blah, blah. And then I'm thinking, and then my son comes downstairs, who's a toddler, and he's like, I need some milk, mom. And I'm like going to the fridge, and I see the glass jugs of Una's milk. And I see the Tetra Pak from Costco of oat milk or soy milk or whatever it was. And I thought, how could my breast milk, I'm holding my baby and breastfeeding her with one hand, trying to pour milk for the other baby in the other hand. And I'm thinking, how could my breast milk be God's perfect gold, liquid gold? You're doing the best you can for your child. It's got all the immunity. It's reading your environment and reading the baby's mouth, and it's giving the best nutrients for building a baby. And then I'm like, why would Una's milk in the same raw form be filled with pus and blood and death and all the stuff we were told as vegan?
Right.
And so I decide to give my son the cow milk secretly. Like, I don't want my customers to find out that I'm thinking this, but it just didn't make sense. And then the Tetra Pak, I'm an environmentalist, and it's a non-recyclable garbage that's just going into the landfill. And I'm thinking, this can't be better than this quart glass jar of Una's milk. And I'm like, how could that be? How could that be? And so I give it to him. He won't drink it because it's not sweet. And I'm like, oh, that's crazy. So that means it's more sugary, this fake milks or milk replacements. And so I put a little maple syrup in it to wean him into this other milk, and I get him onto regular milk. So that was like the first. And then I just had a series of awakenings growing food. There is no food without death. It doesn't exist. It's a fantasy. It's like there's nothing without death. There's no food without death. There's no life without death. There's no vegetables without death. There Death is the opposite of life. It's the flip side of the perfect coin. And without death, life has no meaning. And we
Right.
cannot just declare, I'm not going to put death on my plate, so therefore my food is more moral. It's not real and it's a fantasy. And my mind broke open like, wow, I have been completely programmed in psyop to believe that I could just say, I'm not going to have meat on my plate. And meanwhile, we just planted 1,000 avocado trees at great expense, and we're trapping ground squirrels that are eating the avocados. And I'm thinking, so I don't want to kill the ground squirrels. I find a neighbor, he has a falcon. I'm gonna bring all the ground squirrels to the falconer. The first day we bring a bunch of ground squirrels, and he's like, yeah, they eat two a week, and I have four falcons. And I was like, brought like 15 the first day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he said, so there we were, that my avocado toast has thousands of ground squirrels dead somewhere attached to them. And then that goes for peanut butter, almond butter, all of it. And I realized, and then all the grains and the legumes and the all the tillage killing. I mean, there's just monocrops, and the current agro system is a system of death. Almost all of what we call inputs end in the word side. So herbicide, that means death. Like, and so
Right.
I just realized there was no way. Um, and so I started to look into like, how do we be the keystone species? How do I steward the land the best? How do I build soil? And then you start looking at the health part and you go, oh, there is no nutrients. Minerals are only coming from the soil into a plant. So hydroponic greens that are grown in the grocery store, hydroponic tomatoes, hydroponic cucumbers, or when we just treat the soil like a hydroponic medium, we're just dumping nutrients on top. We're growing this big broccoli. We're fighting with our kids to eat it, and it has no minerals in it. And so I just shifted my whole mindset. And that's how I vegan chef becomes Texas cattle rancher.
And was there any response that really surprised you? Because I know it was not well received within the vegan community, not at large, but portions of the vegan community. But was there any one response or any group of responses that really shocked you?
I mean, when I shifted my restaurants in LA to regenerative, they essentially put me out of business intentionally and on purpose. They protested in person, but the much more damaging protests was that everything is crowdsourced. So you can go and stand outside of a restaurant and say, this information is wrong, and say that this restaurant is permanently closed. And if six or seven people do that in the same day, the internet responds, Google Maps or Apple Maps or Yelp responds by saying this restaurant is permanently closed. And over that happened. And then it takes weeks to get unpermanently closed. You got to prove, you got to show that you're taking money, you're not permanently closed. And they positioned Yelp to remove all of my Yelp reviews. 4,800 five-star reviews got removed because it was a different restaurant. Although I didn't change the name, the 75% of the menu was the same. I just added meat to it, essentially, to some of the entrees, but it was the same restaurant, same ownership, same location, same decor. And they argued and won with Yelp and then they could write bad review after bad review and keep me at 1 star because with 4,800 five-star reviews, there's a buffer. But when you're starting over, there's no buffer.
Right.
And so eventually I could not survive anymore and I went out of business in January of 2025 fully. But so I don't know if that surprised me. I guess what actually surprised me is that the people that are committed to no seed oils and healthy food and regenerative agriculture and having a better food system didn't rise up and support at mass to make sure that we succeeded. And I guess that was the most surprising
Mm-hmm.
uh, for me. Not that the vegans' identity was threatened, and so whenever our identity is threatened, we will do that. Um, I think what surprised me the most is there wasn't enough support. And, we the people do have the power, but we only have the power if we have the will to wield it. And I know the word willpower doesn't actually mean this, but I often say, in order to wield the power, we must have the willpower to make the consistent choices in alignment with what the future that we want is. And we rarely are willing to make the consistent choices in alignment with the future that we desire.
Well, and we have to be courageous enough to speak the truth to others. And I think that that's really over the last few years what has assisted so many people in coming out of the closet, if you will, and being able to finally say what they actually feel. And so, I think from being in the vegan community for a few years anyway, and there was kind of this very interesting, like mob mentality, almost like a religiosity, where it felt extremely judgmental. And there were, people within that community, books written about it and things where it was you were a complete heretic if you ate an egg or butter or whatever it was, that all of a sudden the you would be excommunicated from that community. So I can only speculate what that was like for you from just from an identity standpoint. I think so much of your identity had been built around this. So what was that like, having that kind of backlash from your community?
It was pretty intense, and it started with the vegan. I mean, I also didn't vaccinate during COVID. I've never been vaccinated. My kids have never been vaccinated. My mother was a hippie. She believed God had provided a perfect body and that we had to trust that healing and trust that. And so when we think about what that is to lose your community, to lose your identity, of course it's challenging. And it was coming from multiple directions. I was no longer vegan. I was not willing to comply with the status quo of what was going on in California. And I was realizing our place in nature and that nature never lies. Like so much of what my awakenings around, and that's what my book is about, Debunked by Nature, is that nature doesn't lie. And so we can have all these ideas and constructs in our society, but if you're really observing nature and looking at what's around you, these things are lies. And it's very controversial, the things I say in my book. Essentially, I think race is made up, heritage is not made up, or genetics is not made up. But this idea that we can group a group because of a color of the melanin content, that means they believe or they are a certain way, is a human construct made up. And if you look at nature, a black cow can have a white baby, and no part of the herd is going to be concerned in any way, shape, or form, or even notice it. It is part of the herd and the community. And then gender, we say, is a construct in the world that we live in right now. But the truth is, no, gender is binary, and you cannot have baby cows if you don't do artificial insemination or have a bull. That's just the fact. The girls will jump on each other a lot, they'll lick each other, they'll do lots of sexual things to each other, and no babies will come. And so, this idea that it's all fluid, and even the most masculine female cow with horns that's protecting the herd when there's no bull in there submits to the bull and has a baby. So it's very obvious that mammals are designed a specific way, and we're going to all have different expressions of sexuality. Sure, that's fine to think, but the idea that gender is fluid is actually, that has nothing to do with it. We can have different personalities, different desires, different habits, but gender actually isn't fluid. And people say, well, gender is separate from sex. Well, no, that's just like a made up thing to separate them. It's really clear that women are made to reproduce, and we cannot do that without a man. That's just like the facts. And we've said that that's not the facts and that's fluid. And then we act like race is the facts and is construct, I mean, is real, and we need to abide by it. And so I started to look at these things and realize that humans are the only mammal that don't prioritize water, food, reproduction, and sometimes shelter. We prioritize shelter at all costs, comfort at all costs, and we're pretty much willing to give up our reproduction, our water, and our food. We have seen the condition of our food, the condition of our water, and the condition of our ability to reproduce, and our desire to enshrine laws to make sure that we can end pregnancy. But we have where's the willpower? What if reproductive rights meant the right that my children have to reproduce, that they are capable of reproducing in the future, that they are not chemically sterilized by a world that seems to care little for that ability? The man's sperm count by 2020, 2040 will be zero at the current trajectory. And my son, who is 5 years old, will be right in his reproductive fathering window. I feel like that is something worth rising up and fighting for. And that's a crazy thing to say. That makes me a bigot. That makes me a bad person, because I am more concerned with the ability for the entire American USA construct of humanity to be able to reproduce in the next 20 years than I am about the right to terminate a child. Though I am more concerned, and that makes me crazy. But we see people rising up for that, right? But we don't see anybody rising up and saying, stop poisoning us. Stop. I want my fertility intact.
Yeah. Well, and there's nothing like nature to really bring out truth, right? Like, if we want to discover where the truth lies, we can usually find the truth within nature. So I love that concept. And I think, you know, ultimately, my story kind of parallels yours, although it was a bit earlier. But I came to know of a local woman she had a small farm, but she also had a store where she collaborated with all the local area farmers and ranchers. This was in the central coast of California. And she was procuring all of these products. And, I became acquainted with her. We started talking. She introduced me to the work of, what Joel Salatin was doing at Polyface Farms and all of these things about, why the soil is so important. And I know that that was part of your realization as well in your journey. So can you explain to those who might be unfamiliar why the quality of the soil is so incredibly important, and why we want to ensure that we're not putting, a million chemicals in that soil as well, because I think it does impact things like fertility, like you were mentioning.
Well, soil is largely thought of as just like dirt, like not a living thing, but there's an entire living web inside of the soil of bacteria, virus, fungi, and that microbiology. There is more beings in a teaspoon of healthy soil than there is humans on the planet. So this is a hugely diverse and important ecosystem that is the foundation for all of life. And God or nature or universe, whatever you want to believe, created this perfect balance where plants pull carbon from the atmosphere and they turn it into carbohydrates and they shoot it down through their roots, which feeds large amounts of this microbiology. And then that microbiology, through its waste, makes the minerals in the soil available to the plant. And so by building healthy soil, healthy we build healthy food. If the animals are eating healthy grass, then they are healthier meat. It's all the way up. And right now, we essentially just plow the fields continuously, which kills and disrupts this microbiology. And then we just dump liquid nitrogen, phosphorus on top instead of building soil. So then we're literally just giving the plant what it needs to grow big, but it is what is considered like a topically added nitrogen is totally different than a bioavailable nitrogen coming from the soil because it interacts differently. And then the nitrogen that's in the soil is largely stored until these microbiology make it available for the plant through this relationship between the plant, the roots, the soil, and this perfect relationship. When we just dump nitrogen on top, it washes off. And so we're making not food that's not minerally rich. And we're dumping all of this nitrogen, phosphorus, etc., into our waterways, into our ocean, causing these big green plumes in the ocean and all this stuff. So while we're screaming about this on the environmental side, and then we're wanting to eat vegan food, which is largely monocrops that are uh, putting nitrogen on top. And even if that nitrogen is coming from blood meal or bone meal, it's still piling it on top rather than building soil. And compost and blood meat in compost or poop in compost that is in this microbiology relationship is different than when we're just pouring it on top. And that we've become very, very efficient, but we've become very fragile. And so we have a nation of people that are starving for minerals and are totally obese. And you can see that when you go to the grocery store, you can see that when you go out into the world, what people look like. The other day, my husband was like, I haven't seen a single person in the grocery store that looks like metabolically healthy that's working, their body is like totally working for them. And that's a sad state of affairs, but that's where we're at. And so getting back to doing this the old ways, which is there's six principles of regenerative agriculture. One is context, so grow for what is good for your environment, and then cover crops, keeping the ground covered, and a living root keeps the microbiology alive, and et cetera, et cetera. Build soil health, no till, so do not till the ground, and biodiversity, having multiple things growing, specifically annuals and perennials together, and then animal integration, so moving animals in the herd way that they used to naturally move. But we move our cows every single day with electric fencing. And then the last one is no chemical or low chemical. Some people doing regenerative agriculture still reserve the right to use some chemistry. I do not use any chemistry, but that is part of it. It's low or no, depending on what your certification is.
Mhm.
And those are the principles that create healthy food all the way up, but we are not abiding by those principles in any way, shape, or form. And we're having a total collapse. I mean, the food system is collapsing from both ends, if we want to be totally honest. We've lost 170,000 farms over the last 8 years. That's 15% of all farms. We've lost millions of ranches since the 80s, millions. And this level of collapse it almost feels intentional, like an intentional consolidation, if I would tell you from where I'm standing. But then on the other side, during the pandemic, we lost thousands of small and family restaurants that didn't reopen. We're losing about 9,500 restaurants a year still on the small family size restaurants. And then I just wrote an article. I write a daily column for the Epoch Times, and I wrote, I guess the day before yesterday, that all of these big chains, which we are like are primed for efficiency, are also going out of business. From Papa John's is closing 300 stores, and all and fast casual places as well, like Red Robin and all these places. So hundreds and hundreds of restaurants on these big chains are also being closed. There's a bunch of consolidations and bankruptcies happening on these big chains. And so when we see that on both ends of the system, there's a collapse happening. We're not paying the honest price for food anywhere. We're in a fantasy world all the way along. So on the farm end, there's subsidies for corn and soy, and that impact the price of food all the way up. There's also major subsidies from family farmers, families working for free and farmers working for free to grow our food. 85% of farms work an off-farm job in order to have the privilege to lose money to grow our food. 85%. That's not sustainable. And so when you look at it like that, you can see so we have this huge subsidy. So some reports say that we are paying as little as 30% of the true cost of food between the government subsidies, the insurance subsidies, which is a little complicated to get into, but basically you could take out crop insurance, and often you're just going to take your insurance because you're not growing enough. And so that's another way that there's like a huge subsidy. Between all of these subsidies, we're not paying the true cost of food anywhere along the way. And even with all that subsidies, the Papa John's model can't work because food isn't meant to be that cheap, even on the other end. So you can see that it's collapsing on both ends, and we're largely disconnected from what things cost. And I come across it all the time. We have a restaurant here on the ranch, and people will say $22 for a patty melt. And I'm thinking, can you raise a patty melt for $22? Can you bake the sourdough bread from scratch, raise the cow? It's got kimchi, A2 organic cheddar, and organic red onions, and organic mustard, and then organic fries fried in tallow. There's no way anybody could do that at home for $22. It's just not possible. So,
Right.
but yet we have this idea that food should just be so cheap. Meanwhile, farms are collapsing, restaurants are collapsing. Really, should food be that cheap? I don't. The answer is no, but the system as a whole is so distorted that we are not related to the real cost of food. Most countries pay about 30% of their income for food, and we pay less than 10%. That is a way that we have been programmed. And so the real cost is also hitting us on the metabolic health side. Like, what are we subsidizing in healthcare on food related diseases? It's got to be massive. I don't know the numbers, but it is. I mean, I have known the numbers because I've written about it, but I don't know them off the top of my head. But there's a huge cost on the healthcare side as well. So, right now we're living in a fantasy world where farmers work for free, and tax dollars, or printed money that we call tax dollars, is subsidizing the cost of our food at mass. And we started subsidizing food because men were not draft ready during wartime, and we realized that people were so skinny and unhealthy, they were malnourished. So we started subsidizing the production of high calorie dense food. Well, it was something like less than 20% had uh, malnourishment, which is a high percentage, but somewhere around 20% had malnourishment. We've swung all the way to the other side where only 23% of our young people today are military ready. Now, I'm not saying anybody should go in the military. It's not my thing. I'm pro-life all the way across the board. But if you're not military ready, you're probably not farmer ready, plumber ready, roofer ready, carpenter ready. That your body is not strong enough to do significant manual labor, which is necessary. And we live in the most comfortable time of humanity ever. And so we've allowed ourselves to get weak and soft in such a way that is going to come back and harm us in ways that we can't even comprehend right now. But
Yeah.
government policies get thrown out there, and then they don't have to adjust like a business has to adjust to survive. it can just kind of grow like a snowball. And so the subsidizing of food production had a purpose. And that purpose, we have now swung so far in the other direction, and we have very little malnourishment in this country on the level of not having enough calories. We have a massive amount of malnourishment and obesity, and we have mental health issues and physical health issues and high autism at 1 in 12 people in some states and 1 in 30 something on average. These are unsustainable rates of illness that I would trade for 20% malnourishment any day of the week. And you might say that that's harsh for me to say, but I don't think that we solved a problem and created a much greater monster.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of the issue too is, we're we're subsidizing products that we now have to grow in excess in order to make margins make sense, right? For the average farmer. And then we get to the point where they're having to create all of, I mean, high fructose corn syrup is the perfect example, right? Because we have something, we have to create something for that particular use, for that particular
Or
subsidized
ethanol.
product.
Ethanol is
Right,
even a worse example, to be honest,
right,
because at least high fructose corn syrups, it's not something we should consume, but it is something that's going into the food system.
right.
I mean, we often say the American farmers are feeding the world. 40% of our cornfields are going into your tank to make
Hmm.
your car run less efficiently, drier, have more maintenance issues, and you get worse miles per an hour, miles per gallon. I mean, so explain to me how this makes sense in any way, shape, or form. And then we're using diesel and nitrogen fertilizer derived from gasoline to grow the corn, to add it to gasoline to make it less efficient. And this is all this. And people go, oh, Democrats. Well, that was under Bush. So no, it's both sides are just not. I always there's a guy that comments every day on my uh articles in Epoch Times, and he always puts red or blue, and then he puts the poop emoji. They don't give a about you. And I always play that in my mind, but the ethanol scam is like crazy. What, and it wouldn't exist. And there's a whole oligarchy of people making billions of dollars off of it that are for sure we're friends with whoever, but like we got this idea that there's a limited amount of gas and we needed to add biofuels. And so 40% of our cornfields are going into making our cars run less efficiently. Like, just wrap our head around that. And then we're going to be like, oh, okay, so that makes sense. Uh, it's not an easy thing to turn corn into gasoline anyways. There's way better things we could be doing with those fields. We could be growing beef in a holistic regenerative system. We could be growing a diversity of plants. We could be growing perennials that are staying in the ground and keeping soil covered. I mean, there's a lot of things that we could be doing in those fields, but the farmer can't get out because he's addicted to the subsidies, and I don't blame him. Nobody wants to be the generation that loses the family farm, but the system is so broken and so distorted that there is no off ramps.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And so I've had Doug Lindemood on from Sunrise Ranch, and they have a newer ranch in Montana, and they had just converted into regenerative agriculture. And it was, I don't recall what it was being used for, but what he said was that after only a couple of years, he went out, his son was really into botany. And so he went out into the field and found this species of grass that had not been seen I mean, they thought it was extinct. And after returning the land to itself, right, then they started seeing these species, which were previously thought to be extinct for something like, I don't know, 50 to 100 years prior. So that gives me hope, right? Because I do think that there are ways out of this. I think it's, we're turning the Titanic. I fully understand that. But what do you derive your hope from for the future?
I derive my hope from God. I mean, I have faith and um I believe that good wins, and I believe that we are under a spell, a fog, if you will, and it's a chemical induced, sugar induced, drug induced, alcohol induced, video game induced, pornography induced spell. And if we awaken to the perfection of nature, the perfection of God, the perfection of all of it, and the perfection of ourselves in our own bodies, then we can step into the role of the keystone species. And I am not going to be out here on a soapbox telling everybody what they should do, telling people that porn is evil. And I'm going to walk the walk. I'm going to do hard things. I'm going to take risks. I am going to be the example. And I hope that when people come across a podcast with me on it, or my book, or an article I wrote, or they come to the ranch and they talk to me behind the counter as I'm ringing up their $22 patty melt. I hope that they will see me and say, I want some of that. And what some of that is just honesty and following what I believe is right. And it takes willpower. Like I said, it
Yeah.
takes willpower. I don't know what day of Lent we are, 30 something days, and I'm only doing raw milk and bone broth and tea for 46 days of Lent. And people look at you like you're crazy. And if we don't do hard things on purpose, if we don't do something we don't want to do and resist the desire of convenience and sugar, carbohydrates, and crunching, just the feeling of crunching, if we don't resist those things, then we will be weak when we have to push back against something much more important and much bigger. And so
Yeah.
I am growing the strength inside of myself to be able to fight back. And I want people to see that, and I want that to rub off on them, because if I stand on a soapbox and say it's all collapsing and the blah 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 blah, blah and you should stop, eh, there's no cheese down that tunnel. But
Yeah.
if I walk every day in faith and do what I believe God wants me to do. And it's crazy. I'm here in Central Texas and I'm a follower of Christ, but Christianity in this part of the world is very didactic and separating from the rest of the world. It feels to me like everybody's like, oh, they're a Protestant, they're a Catholic, they're a this, they're, oh, they believe this, they're a reformist, I don't even know what all the terms mean, but they're always separating. In the New Old Testament, there's a word, I don't know if I'm saying it right, like Sabora, which is like the army for God, the seen and unseen army for God. And I'm just want to be part of that army. And so anybody that's moving towards the light, they're my partner in being part of that army. And so I just want to be that. And we are quick to tell people that they're Catholic and Lent is a pagan holiday, or Christmas tree is a pagan and you're celebrating a pagan god by having a Christmas tree or whatever. There's so much of that happens in this area of the world. But soda, pharmaceuticals aren't alchemy. Like I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's money, debt, it's witchcraft. I mean, we're creating with our signature out of thin air, we create money and then we get possessions. It's literally witchcraft. Interest is illegal in the Bible. Like, I don't see anybody freaking out because we have a bank loan. You know what I mean? We're so willing to judge each other. And
Yeah.
then we're so willing to normalize other things that I view as against God. Um, And it's just me. I'm more interested. I don't think astrology is as much against God as I think Dr. Pepper is. And that's not a popular opinion here in Texas. But I'm not
Yeah,
afraid of astrology. I'm not afraid what the heavens were declaring on the night that I was born or the morning I was born. I'm not afraid of that. Dr.
right.
Pepper, I'm afraid of that. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna stay away from soda and continue to be open-minded in how people worship and not didactic. Because I don't know. I was a liberal feminist, had abortions, like voted for Obama twice. I mean, I don't know. I was the married to an undocumented man. Like, I mean, if you had looked up like bleeding heart liberal, like I was probably the picture they showed. Vegan chef, Los Angeles, married to undocumented, two abortions, like feminist, blah, 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 blah. And I was completely set on my head. My mindset completely shifted from nature.
right, right,
And people will be quick to call me a pagan. So I did a bunch of research because I'm not a pagan. I just see the perfection of God in nature. I am not worshiping nature just for the clarity. But then I was like, what does the word pagan mean? And it comes from the word pagai, which means someone who lives outside of the city, someone who lives close to the land, a farmer, someone that lives in the outer areas. And then I was like, well, why do we now use it like as a catch-all for occult worship? And it's just
right,
because essentially the idea of Christ took hold in the cities and the churches took hold in the cities before it did in the outer areas in the country. Especially, there's no internet, there's no what, I mean, people are going to continue with their culture out there, they're separate, right? And then I was like, well, what if that's a psyop? What if this whole like pagan, you're looking at the land, you're looking at nature, you're pagan, you're pagan, you're pagan. What if that is to disconnect us as well? What if what literally healed my heart and corrected my orientation in the world was observing nature? And what if we make people afraid to observe God in nature because it's pagan? Like, I think, and I'm saying this as a follower of Christ, as a person that believes the way is unconditional love and the way that Jesus or Yahshua was professing was unconditional love. I also think he went into the woods for 40 days and 40 nights. Like, I think there is an observation of what God wants for us if we observe it. And I think that there is a way that our culture has kept us with blinders on, and we're only seeing this tiny little pinhole of what is possible for us to see. And I want to keep an open mind.
yeah.
And that's where I'm at. And I knew everything at 25 and I know nothing at 47.
Yeah, absolutely. Same. All right. So, I cannot wait to come visit you at Sovereignty Ranch. They are in Bandera, Texas. It's just outside of San Antonio, if I'm not mistaken. And it looks like an amazing place to be. There's a festival coming up, co-hosted by Alex Zek, called Confluence. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that for anybody that's interested in going out to Sovereignty Ranch to see what they're all about.
Yeah, we only
Mollie,
have
I,
90 tickets left to that. We're
oh
getting,
wow,
um,
crazy.
it's going to be 1,100 people on site. It's going to be awesome. Catherine Austin,
Nice.
Fitz, Alex Zek, myself, Eileen Makusak, a bunch of people. Um, And then we have the following weekend, the 1st and 2nd of May, we also have the American Regeneration, the New American Dream. That's a regenerative farming, homesteading, and environmental entrepreneur or regenerative agriculture entrepreneur summit. And there's going to be super awesome people there as well. White Oak Pastures, Rick
Nice.
Clark, all
Yeah.
these people. And then, yeah, please come out. You can rent a cabin any weekend. You can rent a house and spend the time here on the ranch. We have a restaurant. We're open Tuesday through Sunday. Just drive out and have brunch. Or not
Awesome.
triggered.
All right, Molly. So I ask every guest 8 rapid fire questions at the end of each show. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Number one, if you could choose only one natural remedy for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Spilanthes.
Interesting. All right. Number
Or
two,
apple cider vinegar. I don't know. One of those.
All right. Tell us something most people don't know about you.
I have just as much self-doubt as everybody else. You can see me on Instagram or writing books or being an authority, and we all have that voice, and we all have to quiet it.
I appreciate the transparency. I think that's 100% true of every single one of us. All right. Number three, if I were to compile a playlist of happy music, what song would you suggest be added?
Spirit in the Sky.
My son and I were just talking about that song last night. All right. What is your favorite guilty pleasure?
Thai food.
Number five, what is the most influential book you've ever read?
It might be People of Parrots. It's a weird book, but
Interesting. All right. What does the word revolution mean to you?
the consistent actions towards the future you want to see every day without exception.
And what does the word remedy mean to you?
The thing that will assist the perfection of your body in doing its perfect work.
And lastly, if you could impart one piece of wisdom onto our listeners, what would that be?
You are the keystone species. You belong here. And the entire environmental movement was designed to make you think that you are a plague, a scourge, a problem. But you need to walk outside of your house every single day, kick that door open like, I belong here. God put me here, and I am the keystone species. Now, how can I be the best cell in this body of nature, God, Christ, that I can be?
Mollie Engelhart, it has been a pleasure. I look forward to coming down and meeting you in person. I want to thank all of you for listening and thank Mollie for taking the time to be here. Y'all take care and we'll see you next time.
With hope as a guiding light, through darkest days we'll fight the night. With a whole lot of passion, with a whole lot of truth, Remedy Revolution is here for you.